Welcome back. Let's continue our conversation about how to get the most out of our sources of power. Now we're going to take a slightly deeper dive, which means a little bit longer, but even more exciting, and go into a little bit of detail about just some ideas about how you can leverage the resources that you already have. So there are three big sources of power for negotiators entering the China market. First is business intelligence. Second is alternate counterparties or alternatives in general. And that leads to the third source of power, which is the planning process, the dynamic planning that you'll be going through when you're setting up in China. So here are the general ideas on how to leverage your sources of power that we're going to be discussing. First, we want you to look for ways to position your intellectual property and technology as a valuable but perishable service that you are in control of. Next, to get a good partner, you've got to be a good partner. Everyone should be looking for you. And finally, your growth in China is going to be unpredictable, and there are ways to turn that to your advantage. Let's look at each one of those in a little bit more detail. So let's start by looking at how to manage business intelligence. And the general idea here is that this should be a conversation, not a confession, and not an interrogation. You need to develop your own sources of business intelligence. And when I say business intelligence, I'm talking about the data, the facts, the tools, and the processes, and nowadays the analytic techniques that give your organization a competitive advantage. So there's some value added here, and there may be some confidentiality here. The key things you should be looking to do are to identify bottlenecks that face your production and your operation. It's not just going to be your production, but it might be your setup of a business in China. And any other critical data that you're going to need. So identify bottlenecks in critical data for yourself, and then identify bottlenecks in critical data for your counterparties. Research their competitive environment as well as your own, because that's what's going to give you ammunition to use in the negotiation. The ideal piece of business intelligence is the name of their key competitor and the phone number and best time to reach them. Some people, however, have technology and intellectual property that they both want to profit from and safeguard. So I'll give you a couple of ideas, but quite frankly, this is going to be a challenge for your entire career in China. But here are a couple of ideas that others have used with some success. And the first is a carrot and stick approach. You're going to approach your potential partner or your counterparty and say, good news, you can have access to my intellectual property. Better news, there's more coming. But there's bad news. I can also let other people have access to my technology. And the worst news, I may give your competitors exclusive access to the same technology that you have come to rely on. Okay, so you're going to be using a carrot and stick approach. For some, however, intellectual property is both the value that you're offering and the resource that you are trying to keep safe. You're trying to protect it. So here are some ideas of companies that have turned their IP into a service. And the idea here is that you're giving him what he wants until it becomes what he needs. He's no choice but to continue working with you because you're the source of this big in-demand item. So examples, some people who've done this with a regular rollout approach are people like Apple, Chanel, another fashion brand, Mercedes. They are living today on their ability to sell next year's in-demand item. The Chinese market likes name brands. They like newer. They like improved. This is something the Chinese consumer is well accustomed to. He knows that there's another model coming out next year, and that's the one he wants. For some industries, this is already the reality. Just make sure that you are getting paid for your intellectual property on the one hand, and on the other hand, you're not throttling your market potential by guarding your IP too closely. Next is alternatives and options. In China, this means that other people are looking for you. Bigger brands are looking to work with you. That's what you want to happen. And the way to do that is to be a better partner. The Chinese partners always want more, bigger, better, sooner, because this is their home market and the stakes are a little bit higher for them. So they need to secure their market share in their territory now. Successful negotiators figure out safe ways of sharing their IP and their technology. And if the marketing is successful, you will be having a conversation about power sharing, about titles, and about equity and things like that. 60-40 is the magic number in China right now as far as JV splits. But it is not 60-40 Western side to the Chinese side. The reversed type split has become very popular, where the Chinese side owns a majority stake in the brand in China. Whether or not you are going to follow that course, some people have found it very helpful to make that look possible. Once you say it, it becomes true. So you can't just take that off the table once you say it, but you can put conditions on it. And this is where some negotiating comes in. Make sure you're getting process variables first. For example, make sure you decide on whose bank you're going to use, whose accountant you're going to use, what type of reporting, where the company is going to be officially based. What jurisdiction is going to govern how the company is run. All of this stuff and marketing performance. Talk about that. Make sure that works before you start talking about percentage ownership. And handle sales targets with a contingency plan, not best efforts. Sales targets are going to be something that you need to negotiate very closely and very dynamically, but it's not going to take care of itself. And finally, what about exclusivity? Chinese partners love demanding exclusivity, but they don't offer it themselves, and they don't have much to offer for your exclusivity. They tell you that this is normal business. I'm not sure how true that is, but the conversation's definitely going to come up. So you might want to start qualifying exclusivity and defining exclusivity in your own way very early. What you want is an easy out contract. You want to be able to walk away from this. You also want access to local contacts, be they suppliers or customers or clients or officials. You want to know who you need to know in order to work without him. And you still want separate and permanent protection of your core IP. Even if you are working out a deal with him to share the new developments, you want to make sure that the core stuff stays with you. Finally, let's talk about managing your growth. We talked about business structures. I want you to find a way to turn growth into bargaining power. Here's the deal. When you first come to China, you don't know anything, so you're very flexible. And if you are unfortunate, you are being led around by your new partner. If you are more fortunate, and if you've listened to me, you are keeping your options open. And the idea is you want to turn those options into an advantage for you and not a burden. So you start by building your own independent multi-city network. The greatest option you will have, the greatest power you'll have, is the ability to go to multiple cities in China. Build your own independent multi-city network that is going to enable you to say, I'm going from Shanghai to Shenzhen to Beijing, and I will have either one partner for all three of those cities, one partner in each, or different partners in each city. Understand your counterparty's competitive landscape. And you are always going to be ready to either guard his back or push his buttons. You want the ability to do that. And the way you do that is to keep your growth options open. You may choose another partner, or you may leverage his resources to grow together. He is not afraid of you leaving him if you're going on your own, but he is afraid of you leaving him and going to another Chinese business person that he feels is a competitor. Final thing to remember, it's a business relationship. He plans on benefiting from your growth, and that's fine. He hopes to share the joint success of your partnership. The bad news is he feels entitled to your revenue and to most of your budget, if not all of your budget. So you've got to manage the relationship so that it benefits you. Final word, most winning China scenarios end up with a relationship, and that has to be negotiated. To give yourself an advantage, have other people looking to do business with you. The more people who want you, the more power you have. And this is especially true if you have contacts in cities where your main partner or your existing partner does not have a presence. Okay, thanks very much. I will talk to you again soon.